All right. So the first question that we want to know is what leadership quality, we'll actually start with, we're going to edit this, so don't worry. Start with kind of who you are and what your position is at as a nonprofit leader.
Sure. My name is Ellen Jefferson, and I am the Executive Director of Austin Pets Alive and a veterinarian.
Perfect. All right. So the first question we would like to know is what leadership qualities do you feel have led to your success and why?
I think that probably the things that have helped me the most are a really clear sense of purpose. So really focusing on what needs to get done and trying to get that done as fast as possible and as as with as few distractions as possible. I think that's, it's not something I learned. I think it's just innate, but there's, I think it really helps to not go down all the rabbit holes that you get attracted towards when you're taking on an issue like animal welfare. It's really gigantic, and there's 5 million ways that you can try to tackle the problem, and even defining what the problem is really difficult. And so I think trying to figure out what your end goal is and then moving towards it has been something that's helped me a lot. So for instance, where in animal welfare, for the first 9 years of my career as an executive director, I was doing spay-neuter and founded a low-cost, high-volume spay-neuter clinic trying to stop the breeding of animals so that fewer were coming into the shelters, so fewer would die. And my purpose, my end goal was that animals would not be killed in shelters. And so I did that for 9 years, and then it wasn't working. Our city was at 45% save rate, so only 45% of the animals that were coming into the city shelter were making it out alive. And so I had to regroup, and I think that was a really strong lesson for me of if your goal is to stop the killing of animals, you have to stop the killing of animals, and spaying and neutering doesn't actually do that. Spaying and neutering is solving for something else that isn't directly related to the killing. So if you spay and neuter an animal, you don't know if that animal would have had babies. You don't know if any of those babies would have ended up at the shelter, and you don't know if any of those babies at the shelter would have been killed. And so it's like too many steps away from the goal, even though intuitively you're like, of course, if there's fewer animals. But it's a decade of my life that I spent working on this as the solution, and it didn't actually work. So I think since then I've tried to be a lot more focused and always focusing on the end goal. And when people bring up stuff, oh, we should do this, or we really need to tackle this, it's a lot easier to be like, nope, not that, not that, not that, and just keep going straight towards our goal.
Excellent. You're a rock star. When you took the role of executive director with Austin Pets Alive, what did you do to change the culture of the organization?
Well, our organization was tiny. It was all volunteer, and it was, I think, 10 people, 10 volunteers. So we really didn't have a lot of culture or much going on. It was an advocacy organization. So all the time that I was doing the spay-neuter clinic, Emancipet Spay and Neuter, this organization, Austin Pets Alive, was also around, but they were doing government advocacy, trying to push the city to do more for animals at the shelter. And so when I switched camps and switched from spay-neuter to live release, the organization was only 10 people. And so it really wasn't that difficult. However, in the last, we've grown tremendously. We now have 200 staff and 1,500 active volunteers, and we have about 900 animals in foster at any time. So it's a massive operation now. And we have recently gone through this big conflict resolution where we have volunteers. For a while, it was volunteers and staff were really fighting a lot and having a lot of conflict around things. Most of it, I think, was around control. And we started as an all-volunteer organization and then morphed into mostly staff organization, not mostly, but staff doing a lot of the really important jobs. But we still had a lot of volunteers doing a lot of like dog walking and cleaning cat litter boxes and stuff like that. But I think volunteers wanted a bigger role, and our our ethics and our mantra has always been volunteers can be any level of leadership in the organization, but we weren't practicing that. And so I think that there was a lot of conflict between staff and volunteers, and we were at a breaking point about 2 years ago, and we really needed to try to tackle that. So we tried a lot of things like instituting rules and rewriting handbooks, and none of that worked. We had to go through a complete breakdown of our volunteers program and our manager program, and we're just now at the tail end of that, and it's really, really, really helped a lot. But what I mean by that is there's a volunteer. So typically the way volunteers work in the nonprofits that I can see is that they're sort of an add-on. You have your staff that's doing the stuff that you can't afford to have not get done, and then volunteers are there to help and do a little extra. And I think over time, a lot of these groups become organizations, and including us, that is trying to have this extra mission of letting volunteers feel important. And that is not our mission. That's not why we're here. If all we need are people, whether they're volunteers or staff, need to do the jobs that are going to save the animals' lives. And so we had to kind of break down all of our hierarchies and overhaul our volunteer program. And we really wanted to have that older ethic of having the volunteers be at every level of our org chart. And it didn't matter, it was really just dependent on the person. If they wanted to commit 40 hours and they were leadership and they wanted to take on the responsibility, then it didn't matter if they were paid or not paid. They could go anywhere on the org chart, as long as they were the right fit and they were people we would hire to do it. So we found this organization in Canada that is called like the HR Council of Canada, and it's the only thing that I could find just Googling. We've actually spent tens of thousands of dollars on trying to have consultants come and help us with our problem with culture and got nowhere. And so reduced to Googling, and this HR Council actually has a whole system. They have this whole toolkit on how to create a volunteer program that is actually serving your mission, and you're treating people like people, either they're just paid and unpaid people doing the same jobs. And it was incredibly valuable. And so we just followed all of those steps. And so now our volunteer program is HR for volunteers, just like we have a staff group, a couple people on staff that does HR for staff. And the volunteers are now, they're interviewed, they are put into the right place depending on what their what their skills are and their backgrounds are, and then also what their interests are. And then they feed into our org charts as members of the team. So they actually report to the staff manager. And then the staff manager has a series of leads, paid and unpaid leads. And then each of those leads has paid and unpaid people underneath them. And so it's worked really well. In a few departments, we're still trying to get the kinks out of a couple of the really big giant groups that have like 200 volunteers and 60 staff. It's hard to get that all fixed, but it's really working well. And then on the management, on the staff side, we had to do kind of a breakdown of expectations. People just really did think that staff was different than volunteers. And we had to kind of, go through a lot of come to Jesus type meetings where it's just like, that's not how this is going to work anymore. And if you're not on board, then you probably should go somewhere else, because this is not going to keep happening. So it's been good, but it was a huge culture turnaround, huge. And I think we're on a positive end of it.
Great. What has been your biggest challenge or obstacle?
San Antonio.
Always.
I think the biggest challenge, let's see. There's the reason I'm hesitating is that we have way too many challenges, and they're all really big, and so it's hard to pick one. But I think that one big one is the culture the outside, the external culture that it has sort of built up this whole problem that requires a nonprofit to try to fix it. That's there. It's there for a reason. It's not accidental. And I think that was another big lesson that I learned, is that I really thought that if people just had some tools and had a group to join, that everybody would want to save animals' lives. Like, nobody wants pets to die, right? And it turns out that's not true, that there's a lot of institutionalized way of dealing with animals that it doesn't go away overnight. It doesn't go away just because a nonprofit shows up and tries to do things differently and the citizens want the animals to be saved. And so I think that the most challenging thing has been trying to deal with all the laws that are in place around animals, and every single law that is in place, at least in Texas, at the local level and the state level, and actually even at the federal level, is all built around not having to spend money to kill animals in shelters. And so the institutional layers of bureaucracy that are there, you can't just turn the flip. You can't flip that switch. You've got to kind of break through in ways of building new laws or finding lawyers that will help you find a way to fight something that's like, when I had to fight the Texas Veterinary Board, I had to sue the Texas Veterinary Board because they were trying to impose rules in their interpretation. It's a really big group to fight, and they're the ones that take away people's licenses. They were trying to take away my veterinary license, and they even said during all of our discussions that animals die in shelters. Just get over it. And that's how the veterinary profession views animal shelters, is that's what they do. They're not there to save every single life. They're there to get animals off the street. And for the ones that don't find homes easily, then they should die. And so kind of understanding that this is not just something that happened because people don't have tools or don't have money. This is something that's really ingrained in a lot of the layers of institutionalized way of thinking, has been a huge challenge. And it's made me more aware that you can be a nonprofit leader and you can do really good work, but there's a political side that really, really, really needs attention. And so we are spending more attention on that. We've got a lobbying group now. We've got all day yesterday I was at City Hall working on a new law that starts to make it city code that animals can be pled to rescue groups before they're killed. So there's no such thing as not for rescue. There's no such thing as pregnant animals being spayed if a rescue group wants them. There's all sorts of things now that are the law in Austin that is really groundbreaking, but it's because we're pushing on the political side, because I'm not going to be here forever. I can't fight this fight forever. And our organization, who knows what we're going to look like in 10 years. So if we want life-saving to continue, we need to build the same machine that the killing machine has, and that is a lot of laws that are keeping it going, that make it really hard to undo.
Yeah, we learned a lot about that in class, and kind of the different aspects of having those challenges. Okay, the last question. How do you see your role as executive director?
Can you give me more meat to that question?
This was a Ross question. Ross, I guess what we're trying to get at is, like, how do you see your role as being important as a nonprofit leader to the city of Austin? We can do that question. How do you view your role as important as a nonprofit leader to the city of Austin?
I think that there's many types of executive directors, and everybody has a different niche. And I think mine is really trying to critically think about the problems that we face every day and try to find solutions for them. And I think that there's a lot of good work that can go on just by being the leader and keeping the organization going and doing what it's been doing. But I think the thing that is exciting about the field that I'm in, and also that keeps me wanting to do this, I honestly didn't think I'd be doing this for 20 years. I thought I was going to go and be a veterinarian and be like normal life. And the thing that keeps me coming back is that this is such a huge puzzle to solve for, and there's so many exciting things that we don't know. We have no data, no research about almost anything in animal welfare, And there's a lot that we need to learn so that we can fight off all the old myths, and we can keep finding better ways. So when people talk about no-kill and they're like, oh, you're just warehousing animals forever and they just stack up and they're not getting the care they need. Yeah, the reason people think that is because that's a natural consequence of stopping killing. If you stop throwing them in the garbage can, they actually stay and keep living, and you have to figure out what else to do with them. And so that leads to a whole bunch of other problems, like how do you keep a whole bunch of animals alive in a shelter long enough for them to find their home? How do you get more people into your shelter to want to adopt them? How do you do customer service that's more like the Apple store, that people want to take the more complicated animal instead of the cute little fluffy puppy? There's so many problems that we just don't have any kind of clue to the answers. And so it's really exciting to try to break through all those. Like even just behavior. In dogs, we don't know if a dog bit somebody before it came to the shelter. There's no data that says that behavior is actually repeatable in the next home. Those dogs are just killed everywhere in the United States, and so nobody knows because they're all just killed. So it's really exciting. There's tons to do. So I kind of think of my role as executive director as keeping our organization on the path of trying to solve problems and trying to try to keep leading the movement so that we can create solutions for other people that don't want to solve those problems or don't have the resources that we do. Then we can package it up in published papers or whatever and give it to them so that they don't have to go through the same trials that we're going through. So that's, I don't know, that doesn't really answer the question, I don't think.
You gave some great advice, and I think some great, pertinent information there for sure that I think we can definitely benefit from hearing, because it's all the stuff that we've kind of all learned in this class and are learning through this program is exactly what you're saying. The same kind of struggles, it's pretty much all the same meat is basically, kind of what I'm getting at with that is like, it's all the same everywhere, even if it's not animal welfare, if it's a different organization, it's everything. Development, the same stuff with, the political side. It's very similar. So it's kind of nice to know that everybody's in that same boat. Not the best boat, but it's kind of nice to know everybody's in there. So,
well, if you think of everything as a challenge, then it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Like you're running out of money. You have a month to raise all the money. It's just a challenge. Like you just challenge yourself and like, I can do this. I'll do it.
And you can. You've done amazing things. You're going to continue doing amazing things.
Anybody can. I'm just a regular Joe Schmo. It's fun. It's a fun place to work. I don't think that the corporate sector has this much innovation, honestly, that you can do, that you can just like pick up something and do it. It's much more competitive and much more already solved for.
Right. Perfect. All right. Well, those were my questions. All right. Everybody else good? You guys can unmute. Good?
Well, thanks, guys.
Good.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right.
Sure. Glad to help.
Yeah. You're amazing. Yes, we will. You're amazing. I seriously could not get through grad school without APA and SAPA. I literally write every paper. I do everything on you guys.
Well, there's a million things to write about. So.
I know. I have a major paper coming up actually in this class. It's APA. So much stuff out there to learn about you guys and you. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Talk to you later.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.